I remember the day I first realized things were changing. Not in a way that was obvious at first. It wasn't loud or shocking, not the kind of change you notice in a single grand moment. It was the small things. The look Andre gave me when he introduced Bianca to the family, how tight his smile was, how his eyes flickered nervously between her and me. I was proud of him, proud of my son. He was a good man, at least, I thought he was. But I could see the way she was pulling him away from me, like a predator slowly wearing down its prey. Bianca. She came into our lives like a breeze, smooth and easy, but there was something behind that perfect smile I couldn't quite place. It wasn't long before I understood. Bianca wasn't here for love, she was here for power, for control. And if I'm being honest, I think I knew it before Andre did. I tried to warn him, but Andre wasn't listening. He was in love. The first sign came when she started to redecorate the house. She said it was for the wedding, but I saw the truth in it. The changes weren't just aesthetic, they were meant to erase me. I'd been living here with my late husband for decades, filling it with memories, laughter, our love. And then she walked in with her perfect, expensive taste and started replacing everything. Every picture on the wall, every piece of furniture that had a history. My history. "You really don't need all this clutter, Mrs. Harris," Bianca said to me one day, running her finger along the edge of a photo frame I had hung in the hallway. "It's a bit old-fashioned, don't you think?" Her voice was sweet, but the condescension dripped from her every word. I felt my blood boil, but I held it in. I was smarter than that. If she thought she could push me into a corner, she was mistaken. What hurt most was that Andre said nothing. He didn't defend me. He didn't even blink. I tried not to let it show, but my heart broke in pieces that day. The woman he was marrying, she wasn't just taking over my home, she was taking over him. The day of Andre's wedding was the hardest of my life. I'd raised him, given him everything, and this was supposed to be a celebration of his happiness. But when I walked into that church, it felt more like a funeral. I could feel every eye on me, as though they were wondering why I was even there. No one wanted me there. Not really. I was seated at the back, by the trash bin. It was a small, cruel touch. They thought I wouldn't notice, but I did. Bianca had made sure of it, with her sugary smile and her whispers to the event coordinator. "Make sure she's out of the way," she'd probably said, her tone dripping with sweetness and venom. I could almost hear her voice in my head. Andre stood at the altar. So proud, so happy. Except his eyes never met mine. Not once. His gaze was locked on Bianca as she floated down the aisle in a dress that looked like something out of a dream. Beautiful, perfect. Everything I was not, according to them. It wasn't even the worst part, though. The worst part was the look on his face when he said his vows. It wasn't the love and joy I expected to see. It was fear. He was scared, but he didn't know why. Or maybe he did, but he was too deep in it to care. I wanted to stand up right there, to scream and demand that he see what was happening, but I couldn't. I wasn't going to make a scene at his wedding. No. Instead, I swallowed the pain and watched as they exchanged rings, as if I weren't even there. And then it happened. At the reception, I tried to blend into the background, watching from my lonely seat as the celebration went on. I had no place here anymore, no seat at the table. But I noticed one thing. Bianca made sure she was the center of attention. She pulled Andre away from everyone, pushing him to her side like he was nothing but a pawn. They danced. He held her close, his eyes full of affection. But when he looked at me across the room, there was nothing but distance. That empty look again. And that's when I realized I had lost him completely. After the wedding, the cruelty didn't stop. It grew worse. Bianca's tactics were subtle at first. She'd order me around, pretend to be kind, like she was doing me a favor by letting me live in the house. Andre said nothing. Sometimes he'd even join her, laughing at some joke I didn't understand. I felt like I was disappearing from my own life. But then, I overheard something I wasn't meant to hear. I had been in the kitchen, putting away some dishes, when I heard their voices coming from the living room. Andre was talking about the will. Bianca was asking him about my finances. Specifically, about the money I had saved over the years. My late husband, bless him, had made sure I would be comfortable when he was gone. We weren't millionaires, but we had enough. Enough to live without worrying about every bill, to live with dignity. I never thought anyone would want that. I never thought anyone would covet it. Does she really have that much, Andre? Bianca asked, her voice sweet but edged with something darker. I've been doing some research, and it looks like your mother has quite a fortune tucked away. Yeah, but she's not going to give it up willingly, Andre replied, his voice flat. She's always been stubborn. Well, we can work with stubborn, Bianca said, and I could hear the smile in her voice. It made my skin crawl. But we need her to trust us, to think we're on her side. She has to feel like she's in control. Then we'll take everything. I froze. My heart dropped into my stomach. They weren't just taking my home. They were after everything. My money, my life. I wasn't going to let them take everything. No. Not while I had breath in my body. They might have thought I was just an old woman too weak to fight, but they were wrong. I'd been through far worse in my life, and I had always come out on top. It wasn't going to be easy. But if they wanted a fight, they were going to get one. I started playing the game. The act of the doting, helpless mother. The woman who needed to be taken care of. I let them believe I was soft, that I couldn't handle the pressure. Every time Bianca snapped at me, I took it. Every cruel word Andre said, I held it in. But inside, I was planning. I was watching. I was waiting for my moment. And one thing was for sure, when the time came, they wouldn't see it coming. I'd played the role of the dutiful mother for years, but now it was different. The facade I wore, the one of the old, soft, sweet woman who couldn't stand up for herself, well, that was just a mask. I let Bianca think she had control. Let Andre think I was too old and too tired to fight back. But inside, I was wide awake. Every slight, every cruel word only fueled the fire inside me. It was clear Bianca had made it her mission to tear me down piece by piece. I could see the way she looked at me with that false smile, like I was a bothersome ghost from the past she couldn't shake off. But I wasn't just some ghost to be dismissed. I had power, and if she thought she could strip me of it, she was in for the fight of her life. Bianca was smart, too smart. She knew how to manipulate Andre, how to twist his thoughts and turn him against me. I could see the changes in him. The distance. The coldness in his eyes when he looked at me, as though I was some inconvenience in his perfect life. Every time I tried to reach out, it was like I was speaking to a stranger. The house that had once felt like my sanctuary now felt like a prison. Bianca had slowly but surely taken over every corner of it. The things that had been dear to me, the old photographs, the family heirlooms, were being replaced with her cold, sterile taste. I wasn't just losing my place in my son's life. I was losing my place in the home I'd spent decades building. But I had my secrets. My resources. I wasn't as helpless as they thought. They underestimated me, and I intended to make them regret it. The first step was to bide my time. There was no rush. I'd learned a long time ago that sometimes the quietest moves were the most lethal. I watched and I waited, knowing that the right moment would come, and when it did, I'd strike. Days turned into weeks, and Bianca's reign in the house grew stronger. Every conversation seemed like an attempt to diminish me further. She had this way of twisting her words, pretending to be helpful, but it was always at my expense. It was small things at first, like when she asked me to help with the groceries, but then made sure I was carrying the heaviest bags while she strolled beside me, offering me no assistance. Or when she suggested that I move my things out of the living room to make space for their plans, as if I were an unwelcome guest in my own home. She called it streamlining and modernizing. I called it disrespect. But it was in her more subtle acts of cruelty that I began to realize just how far she was willing to go. It wasn't just the house. It was my very existence she was trying to erase. And the worst part was that Andre, my own son, was too blinded by her to see it. Every time I tried to talk to him, he would brush me off, telling me to let it go or stop being dramatic. He had become a stranger to me, a man I didn't recognize. One evening, while I was sitting in the kitchen, I overheard them again. Andre and Bianca were in the living room, speaking in hushed tones. I wasn't supposed to hear, but the walls in this house were thin, and their words cut through the silence like knives. You really need to do something about her, Andre. Bianca was saying, her voice dripping with false concern. She's getting in the way of everything. She's not going to let go of that fortune willingly. I know, Andre sighed, but what do you want me to do? She's my mother. She's your mother, Bianca repeated, but her tone was sharp now, like she was talking to a child. She's a burden, Andre, and if we don't deal with her soon, she'll just hold us back. Do you really want to spend the rest of your life catering to her? To her demands, to her outdated ways? I felt the blood drain from my face. This was worse than I had imagined. Bianca wasn't just manipulating Andre, she was poisoning his mind, turning him against me in ways I never thought possible. I'll talk to her, Andre replied, sounding weary. But I don't know how much longer I can keep doing this. That was it, the final confirmation I needed. They were plotting against me. My own son and his cruel, calculating wife were conspiring to take everything from me. The house, my money, my life. But they didn't know who they were dealing with. They thought they could wear me down, control me. They were wrong. I knew I had to do something. The time for pretending to be weak was over. But I wasn't going to rush in blindly. No. I had to be strategic, careful. They were expecting me to fold under pressure. What they didn't expect was for me to fight back. I started with small things, almost imperceptible to anyone watching. I stopped catering to their demands. When Bianca asked me to do something, I would pretend I didn't hear her or simply refuse. I didn't make a big scene. I didn't need to. It was in the little refusals, the subtle shifts, that I started to regain my power. I also began to quietly collect information. I'd overhear snippets of conversation between Bianca and Andre, and though they thought I wasn't paying attention, I was. Every word they spoke revealed more about their plan, and every secret they let slip made me stronger. I found out that Bianca had been siphoning money from their joint accounts. Small amounts at first, but enough to raise suspicion. I started looking into her past, things she had kept hidden. Little lies she had told Andre. One day, I found a receipt for a luxury car she had bought, which had been charged to a joint account she'd opened without Andre's knowledge. That was the first real crack in her perfect facade. But I wasn't going to use that information just yet. No. I had to play the long game. Let her think she had the upper hand. Let Andre think he was still in control. The real move would come when they least expected it. I wasn't going to sit back and wait for them to destroy me. I had to confront them, but I needed to be sure I had something to hold over them. Bianca had pushed me to the brink, but I wasn't going down without a fight. One evening, I called Andre into the living room. I had been stewing on everything for days, my mind racing with plans, with schemes. I knew what I had to do, and I wasn't going to give them a chance to tear me apart any longer. Sit down, Andre, I said, my voice low but firm. He hesitated for a moment but obeyed. Mom, he began, but I cut him off. No, don't start, I said, feeling the anger rise in my chest. I know everything, Andre, everything. He blinked, his face pale. What do you mean? I know about the money, I said, watching his eyes widen. I know about your little plan with Bianca, the way you've been pushing me aside, treating me like a burden. Mom, he started again, but this time I raised my hand. Shut up, Andre, I said, my voice sharp. You're going to listen to me now. I had his attention. I had their attention. For the first time in weeks, I felt in control. I've spent my whole life taking care of you, loving you, and you've thrown me away for a woman who doesn't give a damn about you. But I'm not gonna let you or her take what's mine. Not without a fight. He opened his mouth, but no words came out. He was speechless, stunned into silence. I'm not afraid of you, Andre. Or Bianca. You think you can control me? You think I'm just gonna sit back and let you take everything I've worked for? I leaned in, my eyes hard. You've underestimated me, and that's going to be your downfall. As the silence stretched between us, I could see the fear in Andre's eyes. He realized, too late, that the woman he thought was weak, his mother, wasn't someone to be trifled with. And just as I thought he might speak, the door slammed open, and Bianca stepped in, her face twisted in anger. "What's going on in here?" she demanded, her eyes narrowing as she saw the tension between us. But it was too late for her. I had already made my move. For weeks, I had been waiting, watching, calculating. But now, the time had come. It was no longer about being the victim. It was no longer about suffering in silence. I had been broken before, but never again. Bianca and Andre thought they had me cornered. They thought they could break me, wear me down until I was nothing but a shadow of the woman I used to be. But they were wrong. They didn't know who they were dealing with. They didn't know the power that resided in me. I wasn't some helpless old woman who needed to be looked after. No, I had secrets of my own. Things they didn't know, things they could never have imagined. The first step was simple. I had to take back control of my own life. The house was mine, not theirs, no matter how much Bianca tried to make it hers. She had played her part well, convincing Andre that she was the better option, the woman who could fix things. But Andre was too far gone. He had already sold his soul to her. But he hadn't yet realized what he had lost, what he would lose. I began by finding every piece of information I could about Bianca's life before she met Andre. The lies, the manipulation, the things she'd hidden from him, from everyone. I had resources, old friends, people who knew things. It didn't take long for me to uncover the truth. Bianca had a past, a dark one. The perfect facade she had crafted for Andre was just that, a facade. Behind it was a woman who had been involved in multiple scandals, someone with a long history of using men to get what she wanted. There were rumors of financial misdeeds, broken relationships, even a few criminal charges that had mysteriously disappeared from public record. I wasn't going to let her get away with it. Not this time. The plan had been set in motion, but there was one final piece I needed to put in place. I had to make sure Andre saw Bianca for who she truly was. That meant showing him the truth he had been too blinded by love to see. I couldn't make him believe it with words alone. No, I had to show him, expose her for what she really was. I made my move during one of their perfect dinner parties. Bianca had invited a few friends over, all of them hanging on her every word. It was her usual routine, making sure everyone thought she had everything together, that she was the picture of success. Andre was beside her, as always, his eyes focused on her every move. I had arranged for an unexpected guest to arrive that night. An old acquaintance of Bianca's, someone who knew her secrets all too well. I had reached out to him a few days before, promising him something in return for his cooperation. He was hesitant at first, but I knew how to persuade people when I needed to. He came with a stack of documents, things Bianca didn't want anyone to see. It wasn't long before Bianca noticed him. She stiffened when she saw him walk into the living room, his face grim, carrying a folder. Andre didn't notice at first, too caught up in whatever Bianca was saying. But I saw her reaction. Her smile faltered for just a moment. "John," she said, her voice smooth but tight. "What are you doing here?" "I have something to show you," he said, his tone flat. Andre looked up then, confusion crossing his face. "Who is this, Mom?" I could see the fear in Bianca's eyes. The walls she had so carefully constructed around her perfect life were starting to crack. "Don't worry about it, darling," she said quickly, turning to Andre. But it was too late. John had already begun to unfold the documents. "I think your wife needs to explain something to you," he said, his voice cool, and then he dropped the bombshell. The documents revealed everything. The financial scams, the lies, the countless men she had used to further her own ambitions. There were photos, emails, proof that Bianca wasn't just after my fortune. She had been using Andre all along. His wealth, his status, were just stepping stones for her. Andre stood there, frozen as the truth sank in. I watched as the blood drained from his face, the anger, the disbelief. But most of all, I saw the hurt, the betrayal. He looked at Bianca, his eyes wild with confusion and pain. "You lied to me," he whispered, his voice breaking. Bianca, for the first time, didn't have an answer. She stammered, her usual confidence slipping away. But she wasn't done yet. She was still trying to salvage what was left of her control. "You have to understand, Andre," she began, her voice trembling now. I did what I had to do. You know I love you. I just wanted us to have everything. You lied to me, Andre repeated, his voice growing stronger, the anger taking hold. You've been using me. All this time, for money, for power. He turned to me then, his face full of regret. Mom, I'm so sorry. For the first time in months, I saw my son again. The man I had raised, the boy who had once looked at me with love and respect. And in that moment, I knew I had won. The final act of my revenge was simple. It wasn't about getting the money or the house, it was about reclaiming my dignity. Making sure Bianca understood that no matter how much power she thought she had, there were some things you couldn't take from me. My strength, my will, my family. The wedding had been the beginning of everything. The moment they thought they could break me. Now, it was going to be the end of Bianca's reign. I'd invited her to dinner, just the three of us. Andre, Bianca and me. I wanted to give her one last chance to redeem herself. But it wasn't really a chance. It was a final test. A chance for her to prove she wasn't as heartless as I thought. She came, of course. Bianca always showed up when there was something to gain. She was still playing the game, pretending to be the perfect wife. But I could see the cracks in her. The cracks that were too deep to repair. Dinner was quiet at first. Andre and I exchanged occasional glances, but Bianca remained silent, her eyes darting nervously between us. Finally, I broke the silence. Do you remember my wedding, Bianca? I asked casually, leaning back in my chair. She stiffened. Of course, why wouldn't I? I was seated next to the trash at my own son's wedding, I said, my voice cold, but my eyes locked on hers. You made sure of that. But I don't mind. You see, you didn't break me. You thought you could, but you didn't. She opened her mouth to protest, but I cut her off. And just like that, you're walking out of this house, empty-handed. Your perfect life, your perfect little world, it's over. Her face went pale, and for a moment she looked like a cornered animal. She opened her mouth to say something, but no words came out. And then, just like that, I stood up. You're done, Bianca, I said, and for the first time in months I felt true freedom. Now, leave.